There's something about an empty college campus that gets under your skin. The silence. The echo of your own footsteps in those long, forgotten hallways. My name's Jason. I go to school in upstate New York. Last Thanksgiving, I stayed behind in my old dorm, room 304, while almost everyone else went home. If I had known what was coming, I would have left with them. Our dorm was built in the 1950s. The walls are thin. The lights always seem a second from burning out. And everything smells faintly like old paper and dust. With everyone gone, it felt like I was the only person left in a forgotten building. At first, the quiet was almost comforting. I could focus on my project without any distractions. I stayed up late, tapping away at my laptop while the snow kept piling up outside. But the first night, as I was getting ready for bed, I heard it, a knock, too short. Gentle taps on my door. At first, I brushed it off. Maybe someone was lost. Maybe campus security. Doing a check, I opened the door. Nothing. The hallway was empty. Just the wind creaking through an old window at the end. No footprints in the thin dust. No voices. I shrugged it off and closed the door. But that odd, prickling sensation lingered. The next night, I stayed up even later, half hoping I'd imagined things. But just after 1 a.m., the knocking came again, this time louder, more urgent. 3, 4, 5 rapid knocks. As if someone desperately wanted in. Heart pounding. I ripped open the door. Again. The hallway was empty. Not even the sound of footsteps fading away. I felt a shiver that had nothing to do with the cold. I checked the floor for snow or wet marks. Nothing. That night, I left every light on in my room. I stared at the ceiling, listening for something. I'd had a cheap security camera since someone stole my headphones months before. Now, I set it up facing my bed and door. I told myself it was just to put my mind at ease, but part of me wanted to catch whatever was happening on tape, just to know I wasn't going crazy. I tried to sleep, but the sense of being watched kept me awake. At 3 a.m., like clockwork, the knocks returned. But this time, I heard something else. A whisper, so faint I couldn't make out any words. Just the shape of a voice right outside my door. I lay frozen, too scared to move. The only sound was my own breathing, and the heater clanking in the background. I was sure, absolutely sure, someone was standing outside, watching, waiting. I didn't sleep after that. I just lay there, counting the minutes until sunrise. Morning came. My hands shook as I checked the camera footage. At the exact moment the knocks started, I saw it, a shadow in the corner, near the closet. It was shaped like a person, but wrong somehow. No face, just a dark blur. It didn't move, but for a few seconds it was there, watching me sleep, and then it faded, just disappeared, melting back into the wall. I was alone in the room. The door still locked. There was no way anyone could have gotten in. I deleted the footage, but the feeling stayed with me. I packed up and left as soon as break ended. Even now, months later, when I pass the old dorm's 3rd floor, I find myself listening for those quiet knocks. It's a sound I'll never forget. Some nights, I still dream of that shadow standing in the corner, silent and patient. And I wonder, was I really alone in room 304? Or did something stay behind, waiting for the next person to stay there? Alone? Have you ever been lost in the forest? That feeling. At first, it's just a fleeting moment of confusion, almost trivial. But then, almost imperceptibly, it tightens, turning into worry. Then raw anxiety. And finally a quiet, creeping fear that seeps into every cell of your body. This is a true story I once experienced, and even now, just thinking about it sends a cold shiver down my spine. That weekend, my 3 closest friends and I decided to escape the suffocating grip of the city and disappear into the wild. To a forest about 2 hours away. The air was crisp and fresh. The scent of earth and green leaves thick around us. Birds singing from the canopies above. We set up our tents, prepared food, and soaked in the fragile peace that only nature can offer. But that afternoon, everything changed. I stepped away from the group for just a moment to gather more firewood. The sun was starting to dip, casting long, slanting shadows between the trees. When I turned back, expecting to hear the distant laughter of my friends, I was met with nothing but silence. All around me was only the restless wind and the unsettling crunch of dry leaves beneath my feet. I called out their names, my voice echoing in the emptiness. But no one replied. A knot of unease began to twist in my stomach as I started down the trail, trying desperately to remember every tree stump, every bush I'd passed. But the deeper I walked, the more the forest seemed to shift and close in around me. Every direction looked the same. No hint of the familiar. I pulled out my phone, no signal. Dusk was falling quickly, shadows pooling in the undergrowth, and the temperature seemed to drop with every step. A slow, gnawing dread began to take hold. I was just about to turn back when, through the tangled bushes, I caught sight of something, a small cabin, almost swallowed by the undergrowth, sitting about 20 meters off the trail. I could have sworn it wasn't there before. The cabin looked ancient, its sagging roof buried in layers of rotting leaves. The door sealed tight as if it hadn't been opened in years. Drawn by some mix of hope and desperation, I moved closer. Each step feeling heavier, as if the ground itself resisted me. The air around the cabin was unnaturally cold, carrying a stillness that pressed on my skin. I hesitated, then called out, "Is anyone in there?" But was answered only by suffocating silence. Pressing my ear to the weathered door, I heard only the whisper of wind threading through splinters in the wood, sending a chill up my spine. I had no choice but to sit and wait by the door, hoping the night would pass quickly, or that my friends might somehow find me. Darkness fell like a curtain, swallowing every shape and sound. I hugged my knees, surrounded by the black void and the ceaseless wind. That's when the noises started, soft at first, the faint creak of warped floorboards. A quiet, almost inaudible whisper drifting from within the cabin's walls. I barely dared to breathe, straining to listen. For a heart-stopping moment, I was certain, absolutely certain, that someone was standing inside, just inches from where I sat, separated only by a thin layer of decaying wood. I heard muffled whispers, like voices trapped behind glass. And then, nothing. The silence pressed in, heavier than before. I was too afraid to move, too terrified to open the door. At last, as the first pale light of dawn filtered through the tangled branches, I summoned every ounce of courage to flee. My hands were shaking as I retraced my steps, barely daring to look back. I was lucky, my friends were searching for me on the trail. When I told them what had happened, they looked uneasy. One of them said quietly that years ago, someone had disappeared in these woods, right near where I'd been, but no one ever talks about it. There are some things that just never leave you. No matter how many years go by, they linger in the back of your mind. For me, it's what happened one late November night, years ago, under Union Station in Washington, D.C. I'd stayed late at work, one of those endless days where the city feels empty, the streets almost ghostly. When I finally left the office, it was past midnight. The air was cold and damp, fog clinging to the sidewalks, and Union Station was nearly deserted. When I got there, I found the main exit was closed for construction. Yellow tape, barricades, no entry signs everywhere. I sighed, already exhausted, and started to resign myself to the long walk home. But then, I spotted a narrow side corridor. Above it, a flickering sign read, "Service Tunnel, Employees Only, leads to 1st Street Northeast." I hesitated. It looked sketchy, and I'd heard enough urban legends about subway tunnels to know better. But it was late. I was tired, freezing. I told myself it was just a shortcut, just a few minutes, and I'd be out in the open again. The air inside the tunnel was colder, almost unnaturally so. The heavy, metallic scent of old subway corridors hit me immediately. My footsteps echoed, loud and lonely. Overhead, the fluorescent lights flickered. Some buzzed, some went out as I walked by. I tried not to let it get to me, but every footstep I took sounded like it had an echo, a double, as if someone was walking right behind me, matching my pace. I glanced back. Nothing. Just endless concrete walls, stretching into darkness. I pulled out my phone to check the time or maybe turn on the flashlight. But my phone was dead, no service, no battery, nothing. That's when the silence really hit me. No trains, no distant city sounds, just nothing. Then I heard it, a faint whisper, somewhere behind me. "Don't turn around." I froze. Did I imagine it? I tried to tell myself it was just the wind, or maybe my mind playing tricks on me. But I heard it again, clearer this time, right at the edge of my hearing. "Don't turn around." My skin prickled. I started walking faster, and with every step, the echo behind me grew louder, more urgent, like hurried footsteps chasing mine. The lights overhead started flickering even worse. At one point, I caught a glimpse of a shadow moving along the wall. It was gone before I could focus, just a smear of darkness. I broke into a jog. The tunnel seemed to go on forever, and the footsteps behind me got faster, almost frantic. My heart was pounding so loud I could barely breathe. I felt cold air rush past my ear, as if someone had just whispered right beside me, "Don't look. Don't look." I sprinted the last stretch, not daring to look back. My only thought was to get out, no matter what. Finally, I saw the red exit sign at the far end of the tunnel, glowing like salvation. I slammed into the heavy door and practically fell onto the sidewalk of 1st Street. Outside, the city noise felt deafening, car horns, people's voices, lights everywhere. But I couldn't stop shaking. I looked back just once. The door to the tunnel was already swinging shut. There was nothing there. Nothing I could see. I didn't sleep much that night, or for many nights after. But the worst part is, ever since then, whenever I pass through Union Station late at night, I swear I hear that same whisper, floating through the noise of the crowd, "Don't turn around." Sometimes, even in my dreams, the tunnel reappears. I feel that icy breath on my neck. The urge to look back is almost unbearable. But I never do, because some part of me knows, If I ever turn around in that tunnel, whatever followed me that night will finally be waiting.